Alrighty, welcome back. I'm not your news source, but I'm just an average person trying to react to some news. I'd like to hear other people's opinions, and I'd like to share mine. I can't actually source the videos that I'm watching onto like and apply them onto the stream. So basically, I can't have the visual input for everybody, but I could put the audio, and we could listen to stuff together. This is 1 hour ago, CTV News. I'll try to remember where, or saying, I'll try to remember to state where I'm sourcing these clips from.
I'm happy to be joined by two ministers and staff of the Newfoundland Liquor Corporation, Newfoundland and Labrador Liquor Corporation. We're gathered here today in response to President Trump's declaration of tariffs on the weekend. It's unfortunate that our best friend, our most trusted ally, has taken this approach to impact Canadians, and this is a direct attack on Canadian workers, on their families.
Arriving at Watchpoint Gibraltar. Prepare to attack.
We can, as a province, to ensure that we are fighting for Canadians, fighting for workers across our province and across the country. It's a call to all Canadians, all leaders, to meet the moment, big and small. But this attack by the President of the United States is an attack on our identity. It's an attack on our Canadian values. And it's an attack that we had to stand strong and united against. Make no mistake, these are actions of a bully, and unless you stand up to a bully, you'll continue to be bullied. So what we are doing here today in Newfoundland and Labrador is we're removing American products.
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but please subscribe to my YouTube channel, That Dude XD on YouTube. I love you long time.
Trusted allies and best friends. In my case, their family. My wife is an American. I did my surgical training in the United States.
How do you revive if you're... I don't get it.
It hurts on both sides of the
I've only ever been able to revive as Mercy. Is it like one of her powers?
That we respond to this. So effective today, or at midnight tonight, we will be removing all the U.S. alcohol from stores across the province. Happy to take any questions.
Habibi.
Considering excluding American companies from government purchasing and procurement agreements like UPS does?
Yes, absolutely. So the Minister of Finance and I have been reviewing our procurement thresholds, and it's safe to say that there will be an announcement in the coming days looking at increasing the thresholds for Canadian and local content, helping to shore up Canadian supply chain in these trying times. Yeah, approximately $26 million a year. So certainly we're foregoing that, but it's the right move given the attack on Canadians. That this is not just an economic attack. It will have a direct impact to our fishermen, our plant workers, to the supply chain of oil and gas and critical mining, to our rural communities. So this is a call to arms, if you will, for everybody to stand united in the face of this attack.
Is this just on products that were imported from the United States? Because I know there were some questions, like if it's an American-owned brewery that's operating in Canada.
Yeah, and we have to be very careful because these are actions of an individual administration. They're not the actions of every single American or every single person in the United States of America. We need to make sure that this is not just an assault on American brands. For example, we have great corporate citizens here who, in Coors, for example, who we all know is American, but is bottled here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Workers...
I don't have many opinions right now, I'm just listening.
Support that product chain. What this will be, and I think
absorbing.
What will the impacts we felt most with is things like, a direct example would be bourbon. by definition, only ever made and produced in Kentucky. So taking bourbon off the shelf will have a direct impact to bourbon manufacturing in the United States. Not only is that a direct economic and fiscal impact, but it also carries a political impact and a political source of friction, as we've seen in the past. And sometimes those are the ones that have the greatest impact on the president's sphere of influence.
The advice that I would give somebody who's want to join this program, I would say go ahead, because this program, the way, like, for example, for me right now, I landed a job with TD Bank as a fraud analyst. It's just because I knew exactly what I wanted to get out of this program. Looking for a job since I graduated, I can...
President's sphere of influence.
With these tariffs, there's a lot of jobs.
This is going to be
The day so
CTV
far,
News
we've heard about
3
that
hours
conversation,
ago.
but are we getting any details about that phone call?
Yeah, unsurprisingly, you can imagine that there are relatively few details we can confirm through sources that they talked trade, they talked the border as well, and that matches up with what Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, where he talked about this also being a drug war. We can confirm there will be another phone call happening this afternoon. Trump said it's going to happen at around 3 o'clock in his Truth Social post. This is all really lining up. I mean, the question is how much to take from these phone calls. The fact that there are multiple phone calls happening today is likely good news. At the very least, it's a line of communication that's open. As you pointed out, it's the first phone calls and first conversations happening between the Prime Minister and the President since his inauguration. That's incredibly significant. At the same time, we heard yesterday from the Finance Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, speaking to Vashi Kapelos on CTV's Power Play, that it was unlikely that we were going to see any sort of change as a result of any actions over the next 24 hours. He was very pessimistic that these tariffs were something that we could avoid, and he said his conversations with the incoming U.S. Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, suggested that there wouldn't be an opportunity until March to actually revisit
Yo,
these.
what's up,
What I
Slacker?
did think was
What's going on,
particularly
bro?
interesting, and in that same brief press conference scrum that happened last night as Donald Trump was boarding the plane to fly back to the White House in Washington, he did note that these
Your knees
tariffs
getting better?
are going
Nice.
to have an impact on Americans and the American economy. Have a listen to what he said about that.
No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that. But long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world.
And so since Canada issued the retaliatory tariffs, Mexico is expected to do the same this morning. There is an acknowledgement that this is going to be something that isn't good for either country. However, he talks about the long-term benefits there, and that's part of the challenge that I think Canada is going to have to deal with. We're seeing publicly a very different message from Donald Trump each time he talks about these tariffs, and where his focus is, what he specifically wants to deal with, whether it's a new free trade agreement, whether it's supply management, having banking establishments.
Well, that's why they have those
in
protective
Canada, for
equipment.
example, as he mentioned in True Social and in that clip you just played.
They got those
all of
things
these
for
are
a
very
reason,
different
you know?
than what he's
Elbow
talked about in
pads,
the
knee
past. He
pads,
mentioned
wrist
fentanyl in
pads,
that
like
clip
depending
that
on
you
what you're
played.
actually
He did
doing.
mention it in his True Social
I remember
post, and it
skateboarding
seems
and
like it
going
came up in
without
this
any
phone call
protection,
between
and
the
I'd
Prime
get hurt
Minister
so
and the
much more than I
President.
should
But it
have.
speaks to almost moving goalposts every time that they try to tackle this issue, and that's a real challenge for Canadians when it comes to responding to what it is the
Dang.
president is actually after.
Yeah, and that's the problem for businesses. What do? I mean, they're so intertwined with companies in the U.S., and they're sitting there going, is this going to be long-term? Do we take the plunge and look for other markets, or is this going to be short-term? Not an easy move for anybody.
No, it's not. We're seeing the instability in the market. We're also seeing the reaction, from Americans. You talk about businesses. Specifically, Trump is looking to bolster the manufacturing sector in America. And today we're seeing statements from the National Association of Manufacturers in the U.S. saying that these tariffs actually will not be beneficial for them, and that they are deeply concerned that they'd like to see them removed, and that the consequences of these tariffs could actually outweigh any of the benefits that
We're
were
so close.
created
Come on.
under the USMCA or the CUSMA free trade
Well, it's good you're
agreement that
feeling better,
replaced
Slasher.
NAFTA, and they highlighted that free trade agreement as specifically being beneficial to them. And we know that that's an agreement that Donald Trump has also said he wants
Hard to enjoy
renegotiate
sports
and
when you're
change up.
injured.
And so, there are real questions about if Donald Trump's goal is to bolster the American economy and to boost manufacturing,
Get
to
on the
create a more
payload.
insular, protected economy. Is this the best way to do it?
We're so
it
close.
Seems that he believes this is the case, but that adds a massive
That
challenge
damaged
for
me?
American consumers, for American businesses, and for Canadian consumers and businesses who
How do I
export
revive?
our raw materials to that country so
don't think I
frequently. It
can.
makes up such a large portion of our GDP, and that doesn't even touch on the interconnected nature of some of our energy, for example. You look at Line 5, which brings oil from Western Canada into Ontario and into a plant in Sarnia where it's
Damn.
refined. That line crosses up.
Got to get your take on one phone call this morning. Now another phone call coming up in about 2.5 hours. What's going on there, Tom? What do you think?
To my mind, Trump was already juggling with the president of
Good
Mexico,
game.
trying to figure out whether the 1-month extension that
Dang,
apparently has
man.
been granted would
I'm
be.
so sorry.
And he
I'm so
had,
sorry.
he
No,
had that
no
on his
sorries,
front
man.
burner,
We're good.
And he put us on the back burner, which is
I
probably
love
not a
y'all.
bad thing in and of itself. I think that Trudeau overall has taken a very tempered approach to this. We haven't overreacted. Small tariffs would come in on a relatively
Where's my
small number of
endorsements?
items to begin with an announcement that 3 weeks later there would be
300 heels is wild.
So I think that a lot of Canadians are a bit frustrated. They would have loved to have seen someone stand up.
Everyone
and
kept
punch
moving.
the
As soon as I threw that little
for the time
thing
being,
at
I
them,
think
they
that,
just moved or
Trudeau is
jumped.
showing that
So
that sort of
dumb.
patience is probably the best formula. The thing that Trudeau accomplished more than anything else is keeping everybody around the table. Scott Moe was on the air just a few minutes ago giving his take on things, but he was there. He's in agreement with what's being done. Alberta seems to be in lockstep with the other provinces, which was not the case just a couple of weeks ago. So I think that Trudeau taking this more tempered approach, some would say it's timorous or even timid, but I think that he's showing.
Now, this is just personal opinion, but I personally despise when Trudeau and Trump talk behind the scenes. It's what they say behind closed doors that scares me. It's not what they say in front of the news. And Trump and Trudeau, I just feel like that's a terrible combo. I mean, we've seen what that's done before. Shoot. The people don't learn.
A fair bit of maturity, just saying, look, we've been partners with the U.S. for so many years. We're not going to let this, this too will pass, and we've got to get past it.
I should be a different healer if I'm gonna heal, probably, right?
Government has been approaching it.
Yeah, we're going to show our viewers what Canada's retaliatory measures are going to look like. As you point out, tomorrow, $30 billion worth of goods to be hit. That's Tuesday, and then 3 weeks after that, another $125 billion, depending on how this plays out. Again, let me ask you about that call with Mexico. Do you think Justin Trudeau will get the same deal or whatever from Trump as well? In other words, this gets delayed by a month, kicks down the road.
This is horrible.
The Canadian government promises to do more on border security, and that helps to buy some time.
Well, one of the things we have learned about Trump over the years, other than the fact that he lies constantly, is that
This is horrible. At the end of the day, he says it's fentanyl, he says it's the illegal immigrants, he says that it's the trade deficit, he says that it's the fact we don't spend enough into our military, and all this other stuff. It's just, no matter what Canada will try to do, it's not enough to make Trump happy. I can't say America, but it's not enough to make Trump happy. It's actually ridiculous that we're getting a 25% tariff, the same as Mexico. Mexico has it postponed, whereas we don't have it postponed as of yet. China, which is the main source of the fentanyl, which seems to be his big problem, only gets 10%. Mexico gets the same 25% as us, even though they have over 1 million illegal crossings compared to our not even 1% of the crossings. And same thing with the fentanyl, not even 1% of that from what I remember seeing and researching. So if, what is the issues? Because everything he's addressed so far we've addressed and said that we're working on, and we are working on them. We're cracking down on the borders, we're doing this, we're doing that, and no matter what we're doing right now, Trump still just says, nah, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. And then he like posts on Truth Social or whatever they call it, that he just wants basically to make Canada a 51st state. All of this, he says that, he says all these different reasonings as to why he's doing these tariffs on Canada. I'll tell you why he's doing it. He's gonna break the economy, so then we have no choice but to become part of the states. How do you invade and take over land without ever having to step a soldier's foot onto foreign territory? You crash their economy. It's economic war. It's literally what you do to places that you go to war with. You know? You sanction them, you do this, you like make sure that they cannot fight their own fight. I don't know what Trump's doing. There's a lot of good things, I feel like, but then there's like a lot of what the heck, bro, kind of moments. Trump's just a wild character. He's the wild card. You know, when you're flipping through the deck and you come across the Joker. Yeah.
Well, one of the things we have learned about Trump over the years, other than the fact that he lies constantly, is that when he has an issue that he's put on the table, you have to be able to say that you're doing something that he's asked for. That way he can claim victory. So what President Sheinbaum of Mexico did, I think quite cleverly, she said, I'm going to move 10,000 national troops to the border to help secure the border and stop drug trade of fentanyl going into the United States and illegal immigrants. That allows Trump to turn around and say, well, I've paused things for 30.
Okay, so Mexico has 99% basically of the issues that Trump addresses when it comes to illegal immigrants and drug issues and all that kind of stuff. It's Mexico and China, really. Mexico's the one that brings it into America, but China's the one that, gives Mexico the stuff to make it. But they're going to pause the tariffs on Mexico because Mexico is doing what Trump wants, supposedly, by putting, what he said, 10,000 troops at the borders. We've put 2 Black Hawk military helicopters up since all this stuff has gone down. We've put a considerable amount of money invested into this already. And I don't know what else we've done, but I'm sure that there's more. It's probably a longer list. But yet, and if you think about the amount of issues that he's addressing at our border compared to these other borders with the issues that he's addressing, the 2 Black Hawk helicopters is equivalent to the 10,000 people that were sent over to the border in Mexico. Because if you were to look at the amount of issues at that border compared to the amount of issues at our border, yeah. If anything, 2 Black Hawk helicopters is overkill. We don't even need that much. Because that's on top of our already existing border security, which does exist. You'd be a fool if you think that the 49th parallel or 42nd? Whichever. Is it 49? You'd be a fool to think that it's not watched over. Yeah, it's the 49th. I don't know why I was thinking 42nd. Second guess always usually gets me wrong. And that's why they say you should just believe with your gut, your natural instincts, because usually the first thing you spit is the first thing, and it's usually the right thing. It's when you start questioning yourself and having those doubts, it's like, no, you're probably right the first time. Or at least in my case. I'll do that when I do some quick math, and then all of a sudden I'm like, no, isn't it like this number? And then I go like do the math, and it's like, nope, I was right. I'm the world's top yapper. All I do is yap. Yappity yap yap yap. See, if I was doing the same yapping on Fortnite, I think I'd have more people listening. It's just because I'm not yapping on Fortnite. People have to have that thing playing in the background to like soothe the visual aspects.
To the United States and illegal immigrants. That allows Trump to turn around and say, well, I've paused things for 30 days because she's doing what I asked her to do, and that shows that we're going to be able to work together. To the extent that Chrystia Freeland is completely right when she says that the complaint against fentanyl on the Canadian border is a complete fiction. It's
That's what I was saying. The news is even agreeing with what I'm saying. So, the amount of fentanyl and illegal immigrants and the border issues with Canada and the States is so minuscule compared to the amount of issues at the Mexican-US border. They have a lot more border security issues over there than we have up here. So addressing these issues is like addressing like a unicorn that don't exist, basically. It makes no sense. And we're putting money, we're putting like, we sent 2 Black Hawk helicopters out there to the border. And those 2 Black Hawk helicopters should be equivalent to the 10,000 soldiers Mexico has sent to their border when you look at the actual issues that that border has compared to our border. It's pathetic, this world. Let's continue listening.
It's a fraud. It's a con job. It's not true that Canada is the source of anything nearing, not even 1/5 of 1% of the fentanyl that goes into the States comes from Canada. So what is going on? Well, the blubbering about the 51st state.
Yeah, if you listen to Trump, he'll give these numbers, and the numbers, they change from like day to day. And he never tells you where these numbers are sourced from. He just says numbers. I don't know where he pulls them from. I have no idea.
And the desire to get back at Canada because we, have been receiving a subsidy of $200 billion from the U.S. What Trump was trying to say is that Canada has an advantage because we export $200 billion more to the U.S. than what we take in from them. But that's almost all petroleum and gas products. So they get a sweetheart deal on that, a very low price, and then he turns around and says, oh, that's the U.S. subsidizing Canada. So that's the world of Donald Trump, where everything becomes a recrimination. Everybody's trying to take advantage of the poor old U.S., and he's there to put a stop to it because, didn't you know, this is going to be a golden age for them.
You know, you've been in politics long enough, and you know this country very well. Canadians are nice, polite, we work well with others, but when you push us, we get angry, and you're starting to see this boycott American products, buy Canadian as well. What do you make of that, sort of the rising anger out there?
You know what they say about the nice guy, right? It's usually the guy you don't want to get ticked off. You don't want to get on the nice guy's bad side. Because he's the scary one. You know, that quiet kid, the one that you think that's going to bring the gun to school. That's Canada. The one that everyone's actually should be scared to fuck with, because we're nice. We're so nice that you should just be scared all the time. But people like to take niceness for granted. They're holding this area too good. We can't get through this.
It's very real, and I'm hearing it from a lot of people that are friends and family, and people who regularly go to the United States. I have, close friends who have a condo in the States. They say, we're just going to put the thing up for sale. We want nothing to do with the place anymore. So there is going to be a lot of that. People just saying, you're not getting my tourist dollars anymore, and to the extent possible, when I go into a store, if I see something that's made in the U.S. and I've got a similar product that I actually want from Canada, I'm not even going to think twice. I'm going to obviously go towards the Canadian product. There are websites being put together rapidly where you can find information on which products are indeed made in Canada.
We're so petty.
I think this is very real, but beyond that, there's so much foolishness in the approach that Trump is taking. I was listening to one of the people from a very large tanker truck company. They build the tankers that go on these trucks that haul back and forth liquid substances. She said, look, all of our tankers are made either from aluminum or from stainless steel. So we take the ingots of
I'm the only one moving it right now. Come on, guys.
Stainless steel that gets made here, but we don't have the ability to transform it. That gets done in the States. So she says, when I ship that across the border now, it'll get hit with 25%. And then once it's been transformed and I take it back to my factory to make it into a truck, tanker, he says, well, I'm going to get hit again. And she said, once the truck is finished, if I were to export it to the States, it would get hit again. So they're trying to come up with workarounds to only build in the one country what is going to be sold in that country. But it's an absolute waste of time and energy and potential profit. This is what these tariffs are about. Trump is looking to take in billions of dollars, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, into the U.S. Treasury on the backs of American consumers. Todd, they're going to be paying $15 more, if not more, for a tank of gas in the U.S. because of the tariffs that Trump's put on. All that money is to provide him with enough cash so that he can give rich people the tax reductions he's promised them. So it's the average working American family that's going to pay for the tax reduction for Elon Musk and Donald Trump. That's what this is about. And finally, there are enough U.S. politicians starting to twig to the fact that this is just a tax on working Americans. That took a while, but Trump knows that there's going to be a lot of blowback when that becomes clear.
Political commentator Tom Auclair joining us. Tom, great to see you as always. Thanks for this.
Good to see you, Todd.
Dang.
Trump announcing a temporary pause on the 25% tariffs
This
on
is
Mexico
global news?
after coming to an agreement with President Claudia Sheinbaum. In a post to
20 minutes ago.
Social, Trump says he had a very friendly conversation with the president, who agreed to immediately supply 10,000 soldiers to the border between the two countries. The soldiers will be designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into the United States. According to Trump's post, they agreed to pause import tariffs both ways for a month as negotiations continue.
Conversación en el marco de respeto. Y pues esta es la noticia que tenemos que darles. Y me dijo, bueno, pues, ¿cuánto tiempo? Le dije, bueno, vamos a ponerlo en pausa un mes. Y estoy segura que en este mes vamos a poder dar resultados.
Let's go, boys.
Buenos resultados a su pueblo, buenos resultados
For the
al pueblo de
boys.
México. Le planteé que
I don't know if you guys can hear me, but please subscribe to my YouTube channel, That Dude XD. On YouTube, That Dude XD, and endorse me. I need endorsements. I need all the endorsements.
Y hablamos entonces del interés que tenía él y nosotros también de reducir el tráfico de fentanilo que se da de México a Estados Unidos.
What I'd like to see
CNN.
Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection. What I'd like to see Canada become our 51st state. What I'd like to see Canada become our 51st state. What I'd like to see Canada become our 51st state.
See, all this tariffs and shit is this is what I'm saying. This is all he wants is for Canada to become the 51st state. He could care less about anything else. He's gonna blame it on the fentanyl. He's gonna blame it on the illegal immigrants, which are non-existent at the Canadian border. If you look at like the data, there are some, but it's so small compared to the amount. Like, sure, there should be zero, but we're talking like less than 1% of the issue that the states are talking about comes from Canada. Does Canada spend enough towards its own military budget? No, but that's Canada's problem. There's no written agreement saying that they have to spend a certain amount. Now, what there is written agreements for is trade agreements, and guess who's going against those? Not Canada. I'm gonna go make a coffee. Alright, I am back. Sorry about that. Had to make a coffee. It's snowing so much here right now. Like it's since maybe like an hour, no, 2 hours. I've seen at least about close to a foot of snow accumulation, around a foot. I find it really weird that we just decide, like for Americans, like they just decided like, you know what, we're gonna use feet, and they just chose this guy's foot to be like the standard of feet. I think it was like a king or something from what I remember. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was like a king's foot. It might have been before America. I know I was taught that, I just don't remember it properly. Oh, Trump wants to take Canada from me. I don't want Trump to take Canada from me. I want nothing to do with the States. Matter of fact, if they had a Canadian equivalent to YouTube out there, I would no longer be streaming on this platform. That's how far I would like to go to just not support the States. Well, just not support Trump. How dare he want to take Canada from us? What he's doing right now is meddling way too much with our parliament system. Because now they're trying to call for like early elections and stuff, and all this, that, and the other, and you can't say that he doesn't have an influence on this next election here in Canada, because everyone's paying attention to what's happening over there, down south. Everyone's walking on eggshells. What percentage of the states is obese? Because I'm just assuming that if ever there was a war between Canada and the States, we would just count out those obese people. Because they wouldn't even be able to make it up here. And then how populated is the far south in the States? You know, super warm climates. Because sure, I'm sure Texans are strong people, but you put them up here in the cold, they won't last. They got them guns, but besides that, I don't think they could survive. We have some super crazy terrain up here in Canada, geographically speaking. Like, we're so big, we'd be one of the hardest places to invade. Russia is one of the hardest places to invade geographically speaking, but so is Canada. And so is the States. It would literally go probably in that order, or maybe it would go Russia, States, China, Canada. Actually no, we're harder to invade here in Canada than probably China. Canada is surrounded by its allies, basically, except for Russia. But Russia, I mean, to travel through the North Pole to get to Canada, it's like, it's just almost impossible to navigate that. Maybe by plane, but even planes, instruments and navigational tools usually tend to mess up over the poles. Probably something to do with like the Earth's geomagnetic like energy or some shit. Electromagnetic field being stronger up there. Plus, you can't use a compass when you're at the pole. You know what I mean? It just, compasses don't really work when you're at the pole. Either pole. And Canada is just surrounded by its friends. Well, except for the States. The States seems to not be friends with Canada no more. Well, the States, Americans, most Americans love Canada, like the Canadians. If you were to ask them how they felt about our government system, they would tell you that they hate it because it's a bunch of libtards, and if you asked us that same question, we'd tell you the same thing. Or at least majority of us. See, I'm very opinionated when it comes to this stuff. Liberals are good, conservatives are good. Everything is good. But if you give one of these things too much power, then it ends up going too far left or too far right. If things go too far left, then everyone's running around willy-nilly, everyone gets more freedoms, and everyone, you know, there's more equality, more whatever, blah blah blah. But then the economy usually does not do too well when liberals are in power for too long. But whereas conservatives, if you give them power for a long time, they'll keep the economy really nice and good. They'll make things nice and good for the economy. But they'll make some really strict laws and rules and regulations that everyone's got to follow. And if you don't follow, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. That's what happens if you give conservatives too much power, because conservatives are very traditionalist in value. If they swing too far right, but if if you're swinging left one time, right one time, I feel like there should be a party for like both view sets, if that makes sense. Instead of having such opposing view sets, there should be a party that meets in the middle. There should be a political party that meets in the middle. That's like half liberal, half conservative. That way they never swing too far right and they never swing too far left. They would put their job and their priority towards the people and try to solve the people's issues. Instead of trying to fix whatever the government claims to be the issues, they fix what the people think the issues are. Or at least try to. But that's the thing with the people, though. I feel like the education system have really screwed people over because they don't teach people politics. Or, I mean, they do, but just not enough. I don't even think they do that much anymore. I remember I had to take a politics class in grade 10. No, I was in grade 9 taking a grade 10 course, I think. Either way, it was grade 10. But that was the only time I ever really got taught straight up politics. Besides that, you'd hear about politics and get taught a little bit of politics whenever they teach you about your history or about global history or something. but they never really like teach people about politics. So then when you get exposed to the news when you're older, you start growing up, you're out of school and stuff, you get to make your own decisions, you're a man. Well, you know, nobody really taught you how to make those wise decisions when it comes down to, you know, who you vote for and what you hold as your values, and you know. You shouldn't be taught what your values are going to be, but you should be taught to explore your own values, if that makes sense. I've been waffling for like 46 minutes. I've gotten 0 opinions from anybody. Chat. Chat, what's your view on the economic war that's going down? This could very well be the beginning of World War III in a sense. May not be, but it very may well be. It's one of those things where nothing that, like, I mean, there are things that the day-to-day citizen can do, but nothing to stop the long run consequences of this. I love how just like a week or two ago I sounded crazy when I was talking about, like, when I was labeling this as like economic war and like this, that, and the other. Now it's like just, you know, the shit that you're hearing in the news, that's what they're saying. This is the truths. This is economic war. I really don't want to know how the fuck 2025 is gonna end up looking like at the end of the year, man. I'm saying a lot of families ain't gonna be celebrating Christmases like they normally would. That's my prediction. Times are gonna be tough. It's gonna be like huge recession, Great Depression. What's the Canadian dollar at now? Okay, it's still holding. But barely. But that's good to see. There's a huge risk for American and Canadian businesses to just go under. A lot of people that go out of work, and everything's also going to be increased in price. It's a very bad combination. You're talking everything's going to cost more, less people are going to be making money, less jobs are going to be available. Like, if these things happen, this is just not good stuff. I could tell you why Trump wants Canada. it might not be so clear to the average person living elsewhere, but Canada has a lot to offer. Just thinking about Canada with how large it is and with how uninhabited it is, well, that's a lot of vast resources that are untapped, my friend. We have, I think, the third largest known oil reserve in the world in Canada. I'm sure Trump would love to make that theirs. We have huge steel and nickel production. We've got uranium production. We've got potash, all sorts of stuff. We're like, I think, the third largest. We're like, I forget, I think it's third, but one of the biggest farmer, like agricultural countries in the world that ships, you know, food and produce and livestock and stuff like that. Might not be third, but I know we're one of the largest in the world when it comes to that. I'm sure Trump would just love all that. Make it all America's, you know? World's largest fresh water reserves in the world is in Canada. We have the world's largest fresh water reserves. So, water that you can actually drink, basically. We've got the most of it. Well, that's known. That's known. There's probably a lot underground somewhere. But who knows? That might, I mean, it's probably not fresh water if it's underground. That'd be still water. Or mineral water. So no, yeah, we got the most fresh water. Until those caps melt. The caps melt. The caps are usually mainly, I mean, they got lots of gases in there, but lots of fresh water. If all the water melts, that'll make the water less salty. And I feel like changing the salinity of the water, of the sea water, probably not the best thing. But fresh water and sea water tend not to like to mix very well. They can, but they just don't like to. It takes time. Why did I start talking about ice caps and stuff? Oh yeah. When those caps start melting, it's gonna have... Canada has a lot of, like, icy parts in our northern areas. And when things start melty, that's a lot of land that's underneath the ice that'll be exposed. And what comes with all that land? Precious minerals, precious metals, and precious resources, such as, like, oil and all sorts of other stuff. All sorts of goodies. And that's probably the same reason that they want Greenland too. I mean, things are warming up. Land that was underneath the ice at one point is starting to get exposed, and, you know, resources are slowly becoming more available from these areas. Precious resources. Precious minerals and precious metals. That's why he wants Greenland, that's why he wants Canada. All this other stuff he does is to distract the people, so then people can't tell what his main objective is. Imagine how great he can make America if he had Canada's oil, if he had Canada's water, if he had Canada's lumber, if he had Canada's uranium. All these we have a lot of resources here. Imagine how great Trump would make America if all that became American. We have the third largest known oil reserve in the world, I think, from what I remember researching. Either third or fourth. Either way, we're like the largest exporter to the States when it comes to oil. They import like the most of the oil that they import from anyone, they get from us. And I think it's more than any of the other places combined. It's like 60%. So if you were to add all the other ones together, it's still not, it doesn't equal Canada. And Trump just pushes that aside and say, oh, we don't need Canada's oil, we have our own oil. Yeah, you have your own oil, but it's a known fact that you don't have enough oil for yourself. Like, America uses a lot of oil, and their oil demand exceeds the amount of oil that they have within their own reserves and within their own soil. That's why they import, not just because it's cheaper, but because they don't have enough. That's fact. There's a reason that he's only going to put a 10% tariff on the oil, is because he knows that if he'd done anything higher than that, that's insanity. But still, 10% more on oil, and think about all the oil products. There's so many things that are derived from oil. All the way down to your gasoline, basically. You're paying 10% more for oil, you're paying 10% more for gas. That's going to be passed down to the consumer. Not the business ain't going to pay that. The business isn't not going to pay that. They're going to pass that price down to the consumer. That's what they do. When you're a huge business, you don't technically pay your own taxes. You just put that money onto the consumer, so then, you're still paying your taxes, but you're using, that extra money that you charged up on the items. If you have to charge an extra 2 cents on every item that people buy, so then you could, pay that tax rate, then boom, there you go. $25% is insane, though. 25% on almost every import or export out of Canada. I understand the reasoning as to why Trump's doing this. He wants America to be more self-sufficient, which is amazing. But he also wants to take Canada to do so. He wants to make us his cherished 51st state. No. No. See, wanting Canada is one thing, but wanting to take Canada? See, now that just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. That's the kind of shit that makes you, I don't know, it makes you feel a certain way. And I guess he hasn't went out and said, I want to take Canada. But, he's heavily implying that that's his reasonings as to what he's doing and why he's doing the things he's doing with Canada. I can't wait to see what the news is going to be saying after Justin Trudeau gets back from talking with Trump. I'm excited for that. I think I'd like to start some sort of series of just like talking about news, getting people's opinions, and you know, just chatting things up. I like to hear other people's opinions. I get very opinionated on some things, but I'm always open to other opinions. And I love listening to other opinions, even if they clash against my opinion, because at the end of the day, that might be how I change my views, you know? And I'm open to that. And I think that's a good trait, being open to alternate views, even if they oppose against what you think, you know? I'm all for that. Within an hour and 2 minutes, I've had nobody talk to me about any of this stuff. So doing some more math, because we export 60% of the oil that America needs to America, 10% increase on that oil wouldn't have a 10% increase across all oil, because there is other oil being imported from other sources plus America's own oil. So they'd be able to like reduce that down to probably like 6-7%, because you're thinking like 10% of 60%. You know what I mean? And then you take that and put that under your total. Boom. Or I don't know. I don't know. I hate first impressions, because people do judge books by a cover, no matter how much they say they don't or they say they won't. They always do. It's like human instinct to judge a book by its cover. 80% of the vibe that you get from a person, the initial vibe that you get from a person that's going to be a long-lasting vibe that you get from that person, is off the initial judging a book by its cover scenario, where you judge them, and you know, if you click just based off the initial impression, then you click. If you don't, then you don't. And that's why a teacher could hate you for the entire year without you even ever doing nothing. Let me read some comments on this. Also, I gotta put my own comment up there, right? Canada will not fall. I type that because it pisses people off for some reason. They're like, oh, Canada's already falling. It's like, yeah, I am aware that our government system is not doing so great right now. Our political system is in shambles right now. I'm aware of that, but Canada will not fall. And when I say Canada will not fall, I mean Canada, the Canadians, the Canada will not fall. Our economy might fall, our military might fall, our government might fall, but the Canadians, Canada, will never fall. No matter how many times we get beaten down, we'll get right back up. And what's going on with the states, yo? What's going on with the states? The states is declaring economic war basically on all these places, and yet the more important thing that they're going to cover in the news is some plane crashes. Oh, I get it. Horrific incidents. But if you look up the data and statistics on how frequent these things happen, it's actually shockingly frequent how often these plane crashes actually happen. What's less frequent though is how they get this much mainstream publicity and news. Is that to possibly divert the Americans' attentions away from the fact that Trump's declaring economic war on both sides of the border? What's crazy to see is how people are just like scrambling, like completely scrambling to try to get things done to appeal and appease Trump. I feel like Trump has a lot of unchecked power right now as the president of the United States. He jumped right into the second presidency and grabbed that bull right by the horns, and he ain't let go ever since, you know, ever since he's been there. I'm just praying that this results in good things. You know, I hope that this results in Canadians being more self-sufficient and not relying as much on the States, and the same thing vice versa. And the same thing when it comes to Mexico and the States. I hope that Mexico will end up relying less on the States, whereas I also hope that, you know, the States relies less on Mexico, and same thing with China. I hope China finds a way to rely less on US, and US finds a way to rely less on China. You know, I'd love for Canada to bring back more Canadian businesses into Canada, and I'd love for America to do the same thing. You know, it makes sense in a way, because if you think about it, like a car, for example, all these parts crossing the border 6-7 times, we don't really think about it, but that's ought to increase the price of the good at the end of the day, because you're paying somebody to ship that piece of equipment whatever part it might be, through the border, you're paying like somebody to drive that truck through, like, you know, wherever he's got to go. You're paying people to do that stuff. You're paying the warehouse, you're paying this, you're paying that. Nothing's free. But if you kept everything local, if you were to keep things within, let's say, just the States, and built cars only in the States, not relying on parts from Canada, not relying on parts from this, from Mexico, not relying on anything from China, and you had everything in the States, that would bring down the consumer price at the end of the day by a lot. And it would also fuel jobs within the economy. You know, think about it. It's a great thing technically, but using these tariffs to force this is like, I don't know, it's a risky tactic because people are definitely viewing it as economic war. It's like the narrative that they're pushing over here. Which Mexico doesn't seem to be having the same response as Canada, where they're just bending over backwards to, you know, make Trump happy. We're doing the same thing, but to a smaller extent. When Canada says all cards are on the table, that scares me, because Canada has all the cards on the table, and I don't think that Trump realizes what that actually means. Trump's different. Trump will say things and then go do it or not go do it. He'll threaten things and he'll say stuff, you know? The Canadian government, they act. They say and then do. When it comes to things like this, at least. When it comes to that's a whole different route that I'll have to go down after. But no, when it comes to let's go through some of these comments on this video. The video's CNN 1 hour ago, titled "Canadian MP Fires Back After Trump Says He Wants Canada to be 51st State." The comments, let's read some of them. In quotes, "We don't need them," says the country that uses Canada as their main oil supplier. Facts. "As a Canadian, I will never bend the knee to a wannabe dictator and a convicted felon." Shoot. "Give Trump a civics test. This is the dumbest president in American history." "Europe stands with Canada. We can buy your stuff." "I am so sorry, Canada. You don't deserve this kind of treatment. Most of us are with you and support you. Do what you need to do." "Trump trying to annex Canada be sounding like Putin trying to take Ukraine." These are all comments, by the way, that I'm reading. "A wise man once said, you can't fix stupid." "Trump is acting like Al Capone in his syphilitic period." I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. "Trying to do a shakedown." That's a great line. From Europe here. "My dear Canadian friends, we're with you all the way." Quote New York Times. "This is the dumbest trade war throughout history. American consumers American consumers together with the rest of us will end up paying a huge price for this madness. If you don't need Canada, why do you want it so much?" That's getting a like. "Canadian here. Sorry, but this relationship is permanently damaged. It will never be forgotten or forgiven. We will suffer, we will endure, but we will never trust Americans again. The damage is done, and no amount of apologies or time will erase what has been broken. Actions have consequences." This is some serious stuff, man. Boycott American products. I am Canadian and proud of my country. And I'm just quoting and reading what I'm reading inside comments on this CNN video. I am from the UK and fully endorse a boycott of all American goods, plus a Tesla boycott. From tomorrow, I will not I will not purchase anything American. The whole world should do the same. I'm so happy that the USA has got the president they fully deserve. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. Oh no. You know what's funny is how Trump is like basically making it out to where everywhere is the bad guys. Well, this is only going to actually amplify his point when he's trying to brainwash the American public. Because if you think about it, all these places trying to boycott this, boycott that, all these places standing with this, standing with that, it just makes, it just fuels the fire for what Trump's trying to put, like his show that he's trying to put on. This guy wants us to be American. I'm honestly laughing right now. It's a nice idea, but Americans' gun problems are insane. Their healthcare system can totally wipe you out. When you're a Canadian visiting the US, at least you have, at least you know you can leave. Imagine being stuck in that system without any way out. Dang. 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 Canada is so done with this disrespect. Canadians are sick and tired of this stupid joke. Not funny anymore. Total disrespect. Watch out, Trump. Karma is coming. Bro, that's a crazy comment. It's not just in Canada. There is much talk from all over the world to not buy American. Wow. That's crazy. Alright, it's time to start pulling out your investments and start investing in Canada. Invest in, well, I mean, just anywhere but America, technically. If you've got investments in America, I would suggest trying to invest elsewhere. Don't support America. Because if that's the narrative right now, then America's going to be the one who's taking a toll. American businesses is going to be the one that's taking a toll. And people who own American shares and stocks and stuff like that, those are going to be taking a toll too. So if you're a foreigner and you own shares or trades or something, you probably maybe should, like in the States, maybe just double think that. I'm not like an advisor or nothing like that, so I can't tell people what to do with their money. Never would try to do that, but I could suggest you at least thinking about investing elsewhere. You know, I'm sure you could find a similar return rate in a different foreign investment, possibly. But like I said, I'm not a financial advisor. But that's crazy. If people from around the world are starting to like band together against America, that only just amplifies America or Trump's point that everywhere is the bad guy. I forget exactly how he quoted that. Like, I can't quote him exactly, but he basically said everywhere is the bad guy. Like, that everywhere abuses the states, and yeah. That's the narrative he's trying to push to the American people, is that everywhere else is the bad guys, America is the good guys, and everywhere should just, you know, start paying up to the states, because the states, you know, they're the good guys. Let's actually watch the clip. Or listen to it for you guys.
Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection. What I'd like to see, Canada become our 50th.
The video, this is CNN by the way, the video literally just starts off with saying, it's Trump saying, what I'd like to see is Canada becoming the 51st state. It's not even about the fentanyl, it's not even about the illegal immigrants that are crossing from border to border from Canada to the States. It's not about nothing. It's not about, you know, the lack of our military funding. It's not this, it's not that. No matter what he labels it as, he just wants Canada.
What I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need...
What's the alternative if you don't protect Canada as an American? If you do not step up to the plate as an American? Well, first of all, let's just think about the reverse scenario. Think about all the times that Canada has been there throughout history, and even to this day, when America needs any form of assistance. Whether it be 9/11 or whether it be power situations where they need our hydro electricity people to go down there and help fix their electricity, help put them back on the grid, or whether it be us help put out their fires or fight in the wars together, lose our soldiers, lose our men, families torn apart because we helped in wars that we did not need to help in, but because we wanted to assist our American brethren, you know, keep the West free. So the alternative would be America stop helping the people that have been always there for them. And in that alternative would come massive consequences. If Canada was to be invaded by Russia or China or any foreign threat that would be considered a foreign threat to the US, Canada would be a very easy spot for them to try to, if they were to try to infiltrate the US by land, they would go through Canada. It's just, you know, it's strategic. If Russia would take out Canada because America wasn't assisting Canada, that would be like in the alternative hypothesis. America, let's say they just stop helping Canada, stop defending Canada. Let's say Russia comes in or China comes in or one of these foreign threats comes in to invade Canada because, you know, US is like, nope, your problem. Well, that would have direct consequences to the US because they wouldn't just be taking Canada because they want Canada. They'd be doing it because they want to get military installments right next door to the States. And yeah. Stopping defending Canada could potentially lead to World War III, and also a war on the western side of the world that nobody has ever seen before. You can't stop defending Canada, but the alternative to stopping defending Canada right now would be different, because Canada has lots of allies. America's not Canada's only ally. If you were to do some due diligence, do your research, I'll just do some fact checking right now myself. We have lots of allies. Allies work weird nowadays too, because there's like different you could be in like 10 different like, I don't know exactly how that works. Right here it says the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance composed of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, and United States. 2024, October 18th is when that was put out there. Publicsafety.gc.ca, that's government. Our strongest ally is obviously the States, but we have more allies than just that. Britain, Western Europe, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, so we're in NATO. Unless that's ended. Are we still in NATO? See, we've got like economic allies, we've got military allies, there's different types of allies, and like different groups that you can be in. So like, that's why war is so complex nowadays. Going to war with one place might mean going to war with like 7 places. So you've really got to choose carefully. Well, that's not bad. We're like, it says Canada's 27th out of 145 in like, if you were to rank all the military forces in the world. We're 27 out of 145. That's pretty decent. This is definitely not like the best in the world, but Canada has ranked 4th in the updated U.S. News Country Rankings for 2024, achieving an overall index score of 94.1. Notable performances around scoring factors for quality of life, entrepreneurship, It just sounds weird saying that. Okay. social purpose and agility help contribute to the country's strong ranking. So, is that saying that we're like 4th in the world? Just like with like places to want to live or places to live? That can't be right. See, I'm sure that you can't probably find the full list of allies, as like it's for the military to know, if that makes sense. Like, the military doesn't want everybody to know who's their allies, I'm sure. Or the updated list is just probably not out there. I don't know. I was finding like 12 different sources to one question. This is crazy, bro. These comment sections are actually insane. It says, I've never felt such... This is I'm quoting a comment that I'm reading on this CNN video. Pretty recent video, too. It says, I've never felt such nationalism coursing through my veins before. I feel alive and ready to be called to defend Canada against any Yank who has the bright idea to cross into our territory. We will never become part of the divided states of lunacy, bro. That is insane. That is some radical ideology right there. Let's read the comments on that comment. Simple math. 1 nuclear-armed storm shadow sent directly into Washington equals 1 big loss. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. You can't, like, Canada can't nuke the States and States can't nuke Canada, because that would have ramifications to where there's no winner. So, I don't even know. That's not simple math, that's stupid math. Let's see. But you would join the feeling EU, lol. Free the people can decide to join if they want. Nothing wrong with that. It just took a few extra 100 years to free your oppressors in Europe. People are so divided. Oh, Canada. Dance puppets. Dance. Not accurately described. It's not calling his bluff. Canada is serious. Canada is not impressed with his bullying. Standing up. Full stop. Canada should stop all USA exports ASAP. Time for Ontario and Quebec to flip the switch on electricity? That'd be fucked. That'd be insane. Don't do that. I'm just reading comments. Why the hell would Canada want to be America's 51st state? Good grief, what a stupid thing to say. I feel like most of these people are not from the US. I like hearing the Americans' opinions, because usually they're standing up for Canada. I don't know what Trump's like. It's a weird situation. I get the feeling many Americans think this is a short-lived thing. Perhaps for you guys it is. As a Canadian, this is the deepest betrayal from a close family member. Ontario and Quebec will cut all the electricity generated for the state of New York. They can't do that. I mean, they wouldn't do that. They'd just be dumb. A 51st state that's bigger in size than the existing 50 put together? Just that suggestion alone is grossly insulting. That is true. That is true. Canada, when you look at the land mass, is bigger than all 50 states put together. And trying to say that we'd be one state? No. No. If anything, we could probably make America part of Canada. As an American, let me say I'd rather have the US become a province of Canada than try to bully our allies into submission. Bro, that's literally what I was just saying. I'm just reading these comments and I just found a comment right after like my spew about that's funny. Yeah, no, I'm sure that if the average American was offered the day-to-day benefits that Canadians receive in exchange for becoming Canadian, I think most Americans with a good, solid, smart head on their shoulders would take that. They'd jump on that opportunity. Might be a couple states at a time, but it would eventually become all Canada. I remember watching an American Dad episode, and these cartoons stupidly tend to predict the future in some way or another. But in this American Dad episode, Stan, which is like the father character, he's got like a cyborg version of him that comes back in time, and they talk about how Canada and Mexico teamed up and took the United States, became like Connexaco or something. And now Trump's actually like beefing with those two places. This is so ridiculous. It's like, I don't think there's any president that's been stupid enough to basically try to cause any sort of war at both of their land borders in America. The places that border the US is Canada and Mexico. I don't think that there's any other place that borders, like when it comes to land borders, I don't think that there's any other ones. So starting beef with your two neighbors is just crazy.
Protection, we don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They can do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything.
You don't need us for lumber, so what's the opposition to that? You cut down even more trees in the States and risk even more fires in the States. That's kind of dumb. That's kind of dumb. I'll be back.
to see any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs. So I'd love to see that, but some people say that would be a long shot. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state.
We're joined now by Charlie Angus. He's a member of the Canadian Parliament.
Canada will not fall.
You heard him there, sir. What I'd like is for Canada to become our 51st state. He said it before. He just said it again moments ago.
This is tyranny,
Your reaction?
or I don't know. This is some next level shit.
Well, what
I don't know
President
the
Trump also
labelization,
said
but
is the tariffs will not come off
this is definitely
until we give up our
not
birthright
cool.
and our sovereignty to a convicted predator. That is never, ever, ever going to happen. So what Donald Trump has done is unified Canadians in a manner I've never seen before. And while Americans may be waking up to the tariffs, we've already started the pushback. People in Kentucky, did you know?
Why is nobody fighting this
the
guy?
biggest export market for spirits is Canada. We just took everything off the shelves. California, did you know that the largest purchase
Get on the
of wines
payload.
in the world?
It's not gonna move if you guys are just standing beside
You
it.
don't get any more California wines in Ontario. Elon Musk, our premier, just canceled a $100 million deal today.
Doesn't matter how many of these guys we kill, we have to move this thing.
We know that he's erratic. It may be this week, it may be next week, but there's a huge actual boycott going on in grocery stores. Ordinary people, people stopping on the streets. Nobody is buying anything that comes out of the United States right now because we understand this is a threat to who we are as a nation.
Amen.
There are also Republicans here in farm states concerned about ingredients for fertilizers that come from Canada as well. There are a myriad of products that we are just learning about as Americans. Fascinating, although perhaps not under duress to learn about them. He's obviously looking for some kind of concession. You hear him. He talks about Colombia. He's talking about Mexico and the 10,000 Mexican troops. And I know you view him as unreasonable, to say the least here, but do you think that ultimately Canada might end up conceding, or is that not even a possibility?
Hell no.
Well, I think the issue
Never
is
back down,
Donald
never
Trump
what?
is claiming Canada's a narco state. The man's a liar. So would we put some more money on the border? Sure. I'd love to put more money on the border to keep American guns from shooting our people on the streets.
Amen.
We would do that to avoid a trade war. We're reasonable as Canadians. But when you have somebody threatening our sovereignty, well, we're hunkering down for a fight here. So yes, for people in the grain growing belts, potash from Canada is essential. For the tech people, critical minerals, we've already had our BC Premier talk about shutting off the critical mineral flow. Wood, you need that, but the big issue,
Oh my
I think
God.
raised by some of your
Bro, get on the
panelists,
payload.
Auto. The auto sector is so integrated that within a week, even without the retaliatory trade,
Doesn't
pressure
move
from
if we're not
Canada,
on it.
you'll start to see
And the more
Lansing,
people on it, the
Toledo,
better it'll keep
Bowling
moving.
Green start to sputter and go down because this is just-in-time delivery. Our whole North American economy is based on this. So that Donald Trump thinks that Canada is his biggest enemy, the guy wouldn't stand up to Putin. He gives a feather to China, but he's going to pick a fight with us. Well, if that's the way it's going to be, we will be there pound for pound. It's going to hurt us a lot, but the American people are much more divided than we are right now, and we are
Amen.
unified. So we wait to see what comes next.
We're going to see this call, or hope to see soon what comes
I
of it.
healed.
It's supposed to take place in about 45 minutes. Would you say then that Canada is going to call his bluff, or is already calling his bluff?
Yeah, it's a WPFP.
Well, we've already announced, I think, $125
Get
billion
on
in
the
retaliatory
payload.
tariffs.
Get
We will
on
give 21
the
days pause so that our
payload.
companies can start to retool before we
Get on the
launch the
payload.
next
Am I
level. We've
speaking
already started
gibberish?
pulling off a lot of American products off the shelves prior to this. I'm hoping
They
that our
took
Prime
it
Minister
from
will
us.
cut a deal. I think with Donald, it's so
We're just gonna
important that he
stand
looks
for
like
it.
He's won something. I mean, this isn't
Let that
gunboat
happen.
diplomacy.
We're gonna
This is
take
truly,
it.
I don't know, like Al Capone in his syphilitic period trying to do a shakedown. So yeah, we'll make concessions on something that, you know, he can write a press release about. But on key areas, Canadians would hunt our leaders down if they bowed and kissed the ring to the man from Mar-a-Lago. It's not going to happen. So we shall see. I'm hoping that we can get through this and get back to work with our American cousins.
Sir, thanks for being with us, Canadian MP Charlie Angus. We do appreciate it.
Different is calling. Subscription phone plans with Public Mobile.
I can't tell what's hitting me. This team is ass.
President Trump's tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China set to go into effect tomorrow, barring a last-second change of heart. All of those countries now vowing to fight back. Canada announcing retaliatory tariffs of 25%.
If you are American, I'd like for you to stand with Canada.
In 3 weeks, another
Stand for our sovereignty.
could be added. Mexico
Do not let America, do not let Trump bully us. Do not let him take Canada from us. Do not stand with Trump. I beg you as a Canadian.
There are many ways for you to do your part. It might mean checking the labels at the supermarket and picking Canadian-made products. It might mean opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon.
Bro, this team is ass. They don't know what they're doing. Get on the fucking payload.
Forgoing Florida orange juice. Joining us now to discuss, Jason Furman, former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.
It's not team deathmatch.
Sir, good morning to you. Thanks so much for being here.
Morning.
Let's just start with the impact of this. I mean, we've been watching Dow futures, for example, all morning, down around 500 points. Now it's 600 points. There you can see the other markets, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, as we anticipate, you know, the U.S. absorbing what we learned from the president over the weekend. What's the impact?
Keep it going. This time, let's not lose it.
Most markets are down, so Americans are losing retirement savings.
Stay on the payload. You can't defend it if you're all the way up there.
These tariffs. They still think they might
It's not going to move if you're all the way up there.
Quickly. If they last, it's going to be even more. The one market that's gone up is oil prices.
Yeah, and now we're being pushed from the back.
They're going to make it cost you an extra 80 cents to fill the tank of your car, and again, that could go higher.
So, what impact does this have, and what's the difference between, and maybe you can help us understand, why Canada's facing 25%, whereas China, the tariff is 10%, obviously an adversary versus an ally?
I don't think anyone can help you with that question. I mean, it just boggles the mind. You know, you say it's fentanyl, you know, they say it's fentanyl. 40 pounds came over the border from Canada to the United States. A bunch of fentanyl went from the United States to Canada. By the way, those are tiny numbers compared to what you're seeing on the Mexican border. Canada's an incredibly close ally. And it's not just that products are going to become more expensive. It's going to be really hard, for example, for American auto companies to keep their plants open if this trade war continues.
We made it to this blockade. That's great.
Jason, tariffs have been used by both Democratic and Republican administrations in recent years. I mean, President Biden did not undo some of the tariffs that Donald Trump had put into place. This is a tool that in a post-NAFTA America and the resulting, the populism that has resulted from that is not necessarily always unpopular with American consumers. Is there a role for tariffs? And if so, what do you think that is?
Yeah, so this is just at a completely different scale. President Biden added tariffs on $18 billion of stuff. This is $1.4 trillion of stuff. So this is about 100 times more extensive.
You gotta get rid of their support if you're gonna try to get their tank.
And it is true that you couldn't quite see the price increases from the Trump
Only one trying to shoot at the support.
Because many of them weren't on consumer goods or were delayed.
What's our support doing? I don't know, because I'm one of them.
Getting notices from some of the businesses they deal business with that their prices are going up because of these tariffs. You're going to see job loss if these tariffs continue. I think this is going to be the moment when people figure out that a globally integrated economy is good for them both as consumers
Get on the payload.
and as workers.
CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich is with us now. You know, prices.
Work in unity.
Americans pay could be going up.
This is what people are going to care about, what they're paying every single day. A trade war, really there is no winners at the end of the day, according to
We don't have much time
every
left. We're going to lose.
I've spoken to. And there's going to be some losses for the American consumers because even though we're putting these tariffs on Canada and Mexico and China, we as Americans pay for those goods as they come into the country. So just let's look at some of these key items. Food. This is something that Americans have been struggling with for a while now. Prices at the grocery store. And we import, as you mentioned, a ton of avocados, 90% from Mexico, and the Super Bowl is just around the corner. And these are perishable items, so they have to come in every so often. That's going to go
yeah,
up in
if you
price.
guys, we lose the overtime because you guys all left the payload.
Another thing that we need to look at is auto parts, right?
You can't just leave the payload.
In particular, really important because so many of the cars that are
I'm going to endorse the other
US
team because
have
at least
auto
they're
parts
not
from
brain
Canada,
dead.
Mexico. Also fully assembled vehicles coming right into the country. That's going to raise prices potentially by about $3,000 per vehicle. Also wooden lumber, right? We get about 30% from Canada, and then we...
Hashtag boycott America, do not buy American goods. Chat, do not buy American goods. When you're in the grocery store, when you're shopping, do not buy American. Now, if you're an American, that might be tricky, but you gotta do your part. Oh. Why is nobody talking to me, chat? Nobody likes when I talk politics. I've got too young of an audience with this YouTube channel. Hard to hold down a adult conversation.
Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. 10,000 also the number of troops that Mexico announced would be heading to their border. The statement goes on to say from the Prime Minister, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. 10,000 also the number of troops that Mexico announced would be heading to their border. The statement goes on to say from the Prime Minister, Sandy, in addition, and this is all new, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I have also, the Prime Minister writes, signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we will be, backing it up with $200 million.
Great,
Proposed
more
tariffs,
taxpayer dollars.
Will be paused for at least 30 days. while we work together. So
being spent on things we get no say over.
Place, as of midnight tonight is averted for at least a month.
Okay, and that buys us some time, but it sounds as though there's a long checklist of things to happen. Canada's already committed to border security. We've already said that we're going to be working towards making sure that fentanyl doesn't cross the border. So does it seem to you that
there's barely any fentanyl going from Canada to the States? This is ridiculous.
It's a great question, and I think if I could
we're solving problems that don't exist.
Looking for, I would perhaps have figured out our national and international crisis at this point. But I take exactly what you mean, right? Like, I think the pretext of this in the executive order was the border. But just 2 hours ago, he was talking about annexing us and making us the 51st state, and how terrible a trading relationship we have, and how bad that we have been to him, in his view, or to the United States. So I would say, like, my conclusion out of all of this is we may be breathing a sigh of relief at the moment for the next 30 days. But I think that the president still sees utility, whether, the facts bear it out or not, and in most cases they do not, of tariffs, particularly in raising revenue, and as a thing, as he said, a beautiful thing. So I would be nervous to think that this is, crossing the finish line, or we will avert the application of these tariffs on a permanent basis. I think he still sees them as a useful policy tool, which means, the pressure is on, and we'll see what happens in 30 days. But 30 days is better than them coming into effect tomorrow.
That's for sure. Okay, Vashi, thank you.
You bet, Sandy.
And we begin with breaking news on the impending trade war between Canada and the U.S., which could begin as soon as midnight Eastern time with tit-for-tat tariffs. As we take a live look at Washington, we are hearing from U.S. President Donald Trump that he has spoken with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this morning about the issue, and they plan to talk again later on today, 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, according to the Prime Minister, these are the first calls between the two leaders since Trump took office. And as we await more information on these high-stakes communications, we'll bring you comprehensive coverage on how this is all unfolding. We'll also try to answer your questions about what it could mean for you.
We may have short-term a little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
Donald Trump taking questions from reporters last night on his way back to the White House. He's repeating a string of complaints to justify his punishing tariffs, pointing to legal migrants and fentanyl crossing the Canadian border. Trade deficits with Canada, as well as what he claims are Canadian barriers that keep out U.S. goods and services. So for more on our coverage today, we want to bring in the CBC's Janice McGregor. She's live with us from Ottawa. Hey, Janice. So the trade war technically starts tomorrow, but shots have officially been fired politically on both sides. Where do things stand right now?
Yeah, so monitoring things on a few fronts here. First, in terms of the brinkmanship, the last-minute diplomacy, for example, we are hearing from the Prime Minister's office that, yes, this call between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump happened, that they will speak again this afternoon. We're told that what they discussed on the first call was trade and the border. So not very many details. I'm not sure that we would anticipate them saying too much by way of negotiation in public, but for those still hoping there might be some way back from this brink, it is better to be talking than not to be talking, and I guess we continue to monitor this situation as the day rolls along. Otherwise, this is very much a day to take stock of how the first volleys in each direction have landed, and also to keep an eye on the other front in this war, which will be, at this hour, kind of opening up on the southern border as Mexico's president steps forward with her list of retaliation against the Americans. How that changes the calculus in terms of pressure politically on the U.S., adding to different economic levers that people are trying to use to spark attention among key American voices. We know Trade Minister Mary Ng was speaking with her Mexican counterpart late yesterday, presumably wanting to share as much intelligence as they can and understand what each is doing, even if they aren't necessarily working together on this per se. Of course, the nothing short of the future of NAFTA may be what ultimately is on the table here, but just to stick for now to the initial list of $30 billion worth of American imports that the Canadian government released yesterday. I found it was very interesting when they were briefing reporters that Canadian government officials said they couldn't share any kind of a projected impact of what these early waves of retaliation might mean for the economy. Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc did meet with the Bank of Canada and the top kind of financial institutions in this country yesterday. We know from what some of the banks, for example, have had their economists posting publicly over the weekend that there is a huge hit in store and that this is going to hurt. And that this is going to make the fight against inflation harder, something that we were only now kind of getting under control in this country. This early list, though, maybe not so much about economic impact, but political attention grabbing. It includes a lot of products that will result in big American brands that come from very politically sensitive swing states with noisy
Dang, they really got the
senators
team
and
wipe on us, huh?
in them. For example, economist Trevor Tombe ran some napkin math and found that Ohio, the home state of Vice President J.D. Vance, has more than any other, in terms of actual dollar value, been targeted for its exports to Canada. But I want to just have a note of caution here, because I ran kind of one of the totals that came out at the briefing by an industry that was sort of crunching its own numbers, seeing if they could match the government's math, and they're not sure that this list really adds up to the totals that the government says it does. So we watch that, but we also don't know how much revenue is going to come in from these tariffs for a couple of reasons. First, companies can apply to the Canadian government to be exempt from having to pay them. We'll watch to see what the uptake is on that. And also, they don't know how consumers are going to change their behavior. Will a Buy Canadian movement really kind of take hold across the land? If they don't know how many billions they might make in tariff revenue in Ottawa, that will make it difficult to budget for the assistance package that they say is coming for affected workers and specific sectors that are at risk of shedding jobs and being seriously damaged by this trade war. Yesterday, Pierre Poilievre said that Conservatives are going to be keeping a close eye on this angle.
Tariffs must not be a tax grab. None of the money from the tariffs should stay in government coffers or be spent on unrelated government priorities. All of it should go back to the workers and businesses that are affected, and most of it should go back in the form of a massive tax cut.
And now, Janice, that was Pierre Poilievre speaking yesterday, but he actually has a new video out this morning unveiling a proposal of his own to improve Canada's economic competitiveness in the face of course, these new tariffs. So what did we hear from him today?
Yeah, one of these packaged kind of video rants launched on the social media channels. The topic of this one is what a Conservative government would do about, frankly, a perennial issue, the problem of interprovincial trade barriers, basically making it harder for Canadians to do business with each other. The things that they are proposing to do, should they win the next election, are things like standardizing trucking regulations from coast to coast. Poilievre is
My lord, get in there. What are you doing?
Professional licensing.
Bro, get in there.
Easier for people to take
what are you
jobs
doing?
in another province. I will say, Nita Anand, the current minister in charge.
Oh my God, we're gonna lose. This guy's dumb.
Provincial Voices last Friday. They are working on these fronts in some cases already. Some of these things are controversial, not popular with provinces, but Poilievre in his video says a Conservative government would reward provinces that agree to remove
We got 48 seconds to get to the fucking thing.
Canada's GDP growth with a equivalent tax transfer that a province could then use to improve.
Bro, our tank is retarded.
What he didn't say, though, with this plan and a fairness issue that might emerge should it be enacted at some point, is that if you look at the Western Canadian provinces, they've already proactively actually lowered a lot of barriers. They have a partnership, for example, between them. They've been a lot more active on this file than some of the more protectionist jurisdictions in eastern Canada. This proposal would actually be flowing more money, rewarding the more protectionist jurisdictions in the eastern half of the country. They could stand to gain more than the ones in the west who have been maybe better Boy Scouts to this point. So that is one question that may arise as this goes along. We are also watching for any fallout from what we understood was a very interesting meeting between the opposition leaders and Justin Trudeau late yesterday, one we only know about because Elizabeth May talked about it on her social media channels, one where they all agreed that the problem here is not fentanyl, it's about Canadian sovereignty, and Canada must not back down.
Stay on that payload.
So the actual headline here is that Canada has also secured a pause on the tariffs
get on the
for
payload.
30 days. And this is in a post on X by the Prime Minister. If I could just have the liberty to read it to everyone so that they can see the background. He says, I just had a good call with President Trump. Canada is implementing our $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing the border with
Why wouldn't you just stay on that fucking payload? This tank is retarded.
With our American partners and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. Now here's where the new stuff comes in. Oh, there, you've got it up. Great. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering.
Do you like Trump's opinions? It's more than opinions. Dude's the leader of a fucking country. Pardon my language. It's more than opinions. It's not like what he says doesn't happen. What he says happens. It's not like he says, "Oh, we should deport a bunch of people." He does it. You know, this is. I mean, his opinions on what specifically are we referring to? That he's not already like acting upon. Because if he's acting upon it, it's not really just an opinion at that point. It's an action. So what opinions are you referring to that he's not acting upon already? At the end of the day, it's not Trump's opinion I give two shits about, it's the people's opinions. I care about what the people care about. Or, I mean, I care about wanting to know what the people care about. I could give two shits what this greedy son of a bitch wants, bro. That's what Trump is.
European Union leaders are vowing to fight back against possible U.S. tariffs on their...
It's not just Canada that wants to fight back against these U.S. tariffs, but other places too. There's like a global movement at the moment to not buy American and not support America, basically. I don't think Trump really thought through the actions of his consequences, or the consequences of his actions. What got you so into politics all of a sudden? I mean, I've always been slightly into politics with my, like, I just don't really talk about it. Stream-wise, I mean, I just feel like this is a very important, like, globally speaking, I feel like these are the things we should be talking about. We shouldn't be talking about like the less important things. Like, there are other important things to talk about, but we should be trying to focus on the more important things in the world at the moment. Usually politics are not this like drastic, you know what I mean? Like, there's not this kind of crazy stuff affecting us over here in the West very often. And this isn't just like affecting the West anymore. This is talking like, we're talking about Europe, we're talking about China, we're talking about like I feel like this could end up becoming the beginning of World War III, but that's worst case scenario, you know? Because a lot of places are viewing this, a lot of places are viewing what Trump's doing as economic war, as like trade war, an economic trade war. But he's targeting a lot of people to where I'm sure one of these people are going to be like, nah, screw you, and do something. And the minute that somebody decides, or like some place decides to do something to the US, then everything that Trump said about how everyone's the enemy, how everyone takes advantage of them, this, that, and the other, everyone's the enemy, well, that will all become true. Because right now, that's what it seems to be happening. The US is the target of everybody. Everyone wanting to boycott the US, everyone doesn't want to buy from the States no more. Trump has a war mindset. Trump has a business mindset. Trump has no experience in war. He's never been a general, he's never been, from what I've researched, he's never been like in that realm before, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, he's never been in the military realm. He probably learnt about, like, more about the military realm the first time around when he was president, but he still doesn't know the ins and outs about how that actually probably runs. Am I a Democrat? Do you know the definition of Democrat? I hate labels. Personally, I hate labels because if I say that I'm one thing, then you'll just think that I believe only in this strict set of values and mindsets. You know what I mean? If I say I'm a liberal, then you'll think, oh, he's a libtard, he's super far left. If I say I'm a conservative, then you'll be like, oh, he's super far right. If I say I'm a Democrat or a Republican or this, that, and the other, just no matter what I say, I would be giving myself a label, and I don't like that. Definition of Democrat: an advocate or supporter of democracy, a member of a Democratic Party. Now, what does democracy mean? A system of government by the whole population or all the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. A state governed by democracy, plural, noun, democracies. Control of an organization or group by the majority of its members. That basically means majority rules. So you know, like if you were to vote on something when you were in like class, maybe like 3rd grade or something, everybody has to raise their hand, you know, what you guys want to do at recess or something like that. and whoever, you know, whichever one has the most hands raised ends up winning, because majority rules. Well, that's democracy. Welcome to America. Shoot. Where no matter what, you're going to have a population, a large portion of the population that's not going to be happy with the results. You know what I mean? Or at least that's how I broke it down. Definition of Republican: a person advocating or supporting Republican government. A member or supporter of the Republican Party. That really doesn't tell me what Republican means, though. It just says... A form of a government, constitution, etc., belonging to or a characteristic of the republic. Okay, well, what's a republic? Republic definition. See, they love to lose people in translations. A state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives, and which has an elected or nominated president rather than a monarch. Sorry about that, I am back. Alright, so, the archaic meaning of it would be a group of a group with a certain equality between its members. That's the more archaic definition. So what is monarch then? Monarch definition: a sovereign head of state, especially king, queen, or emperor. So basically a president's the opposite of a king, queen, or emperor, is what I gather from that. I think like a king, queen, or emperor holds power over the people because they took power over the people, whereas a president is elected by the people, thus given the power by the people, instead of it being like a forced situation. Where I might just be wrong on that. I'm not 100% sure how kings, queens, emperors, and all that kind of stuff work. But I know that they rule over people in a way that is different than a president. Like you don't elect somebody to be queen or king. It gets passed to them by their heritage. But originally, how did they get into... You're born into the position of king. Yes, but originally, how did they get that power? Was it the people that granted them the power and said, "You are my king"? Or was it the people that said, "I am your king"? It's almost like which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Because you can't if you think all the way back, you can't just be born as a king, because, like, who was the first king? You know what I mean? Like, there has to be another way to become king for the lineage way to have even become a thing. So it's either somebody was made to be a king by the people, or somebody said, I am your king, and forcefully took leadership. Way back when. And then eventually, you know, they made and appointed their son king, and so on and so forth. Yeah, see, right here it says, other paths included conquering territory through war, being elected by powerful nobles, or gaining the support of the aristocracy, or however you pronounce that, through political maneuvering and alliances depending on the specific kingdom's customs and power dynamics. So, way back when people was different back then, they'd be like, I just destroyed your land, I'm your king now, and that's what's up. And that's what they done. They would just like conquer the territory through war. So basically it's like they yeah, don't really need to go into specifics on how that works, but yeah, there obviously is alternate ways back then of becoming kings, because if you think about the first king, you can't just be born into a king. Like, somebody would have had to make that person king, or he would have had to make himself king. If you really think about it, there's so many different ways that people live by. We still have, like, we have all these different systems on this planet, all intermingling. We've got kings, we've got queens, we've got presidents, we've got monarchs, we've got all the above. We've got these huge religions, like we got places that are actually still ran by their religious empire. Like, this planet is so diverse if you think about the ways that, like, people live by. Now, what's the definition of liberal? Because that word gets tossed around a lot nowadays. Liberal. Willing to respect or accept behavior or opinions different from one's own, open to new ideas. Relating to or denoting a political and social philosophy that promotes individual rights, civil liberties, democracy, and free enterprise. Now let's look up the definition of conservative, because that's also tossed around nowadays a lot. Averse to change or innovation and holding traditional values. So basically, averse to change or innovation. So they don't like change. They don't like new things. They don't like new ideas. They just want to stick to their traditionalist values. in a political context favoring free enterprise, private ownership, and sociality, traditional ideas. So they both favor free enterprise, liberal and conservative. That's a key. So there's really not that much difference between one is just more open to opposing views, and the other one is, you know, more stuck in their ways. Now, what about traditionalism or traditionalists? Traditionalism. The upholding or maintenance of tradition, especially so as to resist change. Historical definition of traditionalism: the theory that all moral and religious truths comes from divine revelation passed on by tradition, human reason being incapable of attaining it. So basically, traditionalism is just like the passing down of the same, like, traditions and stuff, but without proper human. Like, there's no proper reason. If you were to explain why traditionalism like exists and why people like to stay the same, they can't really give you a good answer, really. I mean, besides maybe it's like, it's comforting. I'm only 13, so you are teaching me right now. Well, what I want you to know is that no matter what fact you think you might hear from me on this YouTube channel, you have to always go do your own due diligence and research things yourself, because you cannot just trust the words of some dude that you hear on the internet. For all you know, I'm making things up and I'm giving you fake definitions. That's not the case. I am reading from the dictionary definitions that I'm provided to by Google, but, you know, you can't just trust everything that you hear out there, because there's a lot of misinformation and fake news out there. So, I'd like for people to find an enjoyment in educating themselves on topics that they enjoy. Don't leave it to other people to, you know, tell you how things are. I like to share a lot of my opinions in here too, and I don't want my opinions to get misinterpreted as facts. And when I quote things, I might get my facts wrong. Are you a nerd? In what context are you using that, though? Like, what do you mean by nerd? Am I intelligent? I feel like the word and the term nerd gets confused with geek a lot. Because there's a difference between geek and nerd, but people don't really acknowledge the differences. I wouldn't say that I'm like particularly super nerdy in one way or another, but I am slightly nerdy in some ways, and I would like to think that I'm intelligent. I would like to hope that I'm intelligent, but it's not really up for me to decide, right? At the end of the day. If I sound dumb to other people, then it's just what it is. But think about it this way. In a world full of idiots, the smart people sound stupid. In a world full of evil, good looks bad. I really like that I can get people to think. If I can get you to think, I feel like I've done something good. You know what I mean? Wait, what, Mr. Philosopher? I mean, it makes sense though. In a world full of chaos, the sane look insane, you know? In a world full of chaos, the sane will look insane. Because everyone's just insane. So that 1% of sane people, whatever they say just looks crazy. My brain might explode. No, don't let your brain explode. Just think about how cultures have found like different ways of finding the balance. You know, yin and yang, for example, most classic example. Everyone's seen the yin yang symbol. Well, that's good and evil. You can't have good without evil, and you can't have evil without good. You know? And where there's evil, there's a little bit of good. And where there's good, there's a little bit of evil. And you could see that with, you know, the symbol. It like symbolizes it perfectly. You don't even need like a psychology or like any, like you don't need any kind of degree just to, like, you see the symbol. I feel like it's universal too. You see the symbol and you're like, ah. It's balance. You know what I mean? Bro, if you get the people fighting with each other, then they don't pay attention to the bullshit that's going on behind the scenes. You should really study the different ways that people have controlled people in the past and how people control people to this day. There's so many different ways that you can control a population to do the things that you want them to do. If you get everybody fighting out in the streets, they're not thinking about the shit that's going down with all the people pulling the strings behind the scenes. More than the Roman circus, my dude. I think this might not be statistically accurate, but I think last I saw 1/3 of the shootings that happened in Canada happened with an illegally smuggled gun that came from America. Don't know how accurate that is, but I think I heard that. My quote might be off a little bit, but still. If anything, the border issues at the Canadian-US border is more America's issues than it is Canada's issues. I gotta go washroom real quick. You should play Fortnite while you talk. Alright, but I gotta end this stream. I'll have to restart the stream. I wouldn't mind switching games, to be honest. I'll be back on in like 5. Remember when I spammed your text-to-speech and you banned me for 24 hours? Yeah. Yeah. I'll be back. Make sure you got noties turned on.